Hey everyone, it's Tammy, and we are on day 18. Day 18 of 31 days of essential oils. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. This has been quite the evolutionary process. Um, I've been such a champion of essential oils for so long 30 years for those of you who are just tuning in or discovering this channel, welcome. But yeah, I've been working with oils for 30 years. I do not represent a company. I've been working independently, researching as well as applying and modifying use of essential oils. I'm also internationally certified as a master clinical aromatherapist, and I have specialized in the study of plant constituents in relation to human health and drug development. So when I deliver these messages, it's really about practical application and understanding from how I've used them. It's my version of essential oil use. Okay, so thank you for being here. To those of you who have been on this with me, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you. And I also want to say thank you very much for your comments. They do, they mean a lot. They actually mean a lot to me because this is exciting. It's important to me. And so thank you for allowing me to share my perspective with you. Now, today I want to get into talking about Copaiba. I think some people say it differently. So in the title, and as you can see, it's spelled Copaiba. That is the oil we're talking about today. I've heard some people who work with other companies, I think I don't even know how to say it. But anyway, I pronounce it Copaiba. That's what I'm saying in this video. Copaiba is it's a very interesting oil. And in the sense that it has probably the highest content of beta-caryophyllene of any oil that we can get our hands on. And the significance to that is the fact that if you are taking any form of psychotropic medication, that would be anything like an anxiolytic, antidepressant, any of the antipsychotics, anything along the lines of mental health concerns, essentially do not mix well with Copaiba, especially primarily because of the beta-caryophyllene. So I just want to say that up front. It's not recommended for that. I've seen far too many issues with people who have combined it. It is beta-caryophyllene, for those of you who are unfamiliar, or just getting to know the constituents. Beta-caryophyllene comes from what's called caryophyllene oxide. It's a family of constituents, and they are cannabinoids. There you go. So, I find it interesting here in the States that there is this big push to legalize cannabis because somehow or another cannabis contains the miracle components. And in fact, the same components or similar, truthfully, caryophyllene oxides are in cannabis. And it is, like I said, it's one of the cannabinoids. It's actually called cannabis because it has 421 constituents are cannabinoids. And that's significant because the human body has an endocannabinoid system, which means we have the ability to produce cannabinoids. And when we use cannabinoids, we want to make sure that, how do I say this, that they get along. I realize that they show up together in cannabis, but when we start pulling them from different places, from different plants, it's sometimes the way it works doesn't necessarily, it's not the same as you would find in cannabis. So the cannabis plant itself does have a lot of health benefits, but as I was speaking with somebody yesterday, the challenge that we're facing is that the legalization of cannabis is more along the lines of money making as opposed to really health benefits. Because as I said, many plants have cannabinoids in them, and the endocannabinoid system works hand in hand with the endogenous opioid system, like I was talking about on Monday regarding myrrh. Those two systems work really well together for calming and soothing and supporting immune function and so forth. So when we when we combine them, the thing is what I want, how do I want to say this? The constituents in each plant. So the plant comes together and it has all its different components, and so how they work together is going to differ from how a cannabis plant works together. The components in a cannabis plant work together. So there are advantages to a plant, but at the same time, cannabis isn't for everybody. And I'm not just talking about the psychotropic effects or the psychoactive effects. I'm talking about the overall effect on the system, as in, carotenoid oxides not being recommended for people who are taking any sort of psychotropic medication. And the reason for that is because a number of cannabinoids, including CBD, are recognized for their ability to alter liver enzyme activity. So sometimes it could be an adjunctive, meaning it'll increase the level of the medication that you're taking, or it could be an antagonist, which means it'll cause the exact opposite effect. So it's important to just disregard, truthfully, even using CBD if you're taking any sort of psychotropic medications. The interesting thing is when we talk about conflict and contraindications, right? Potential interactions. Please understand these interactions aren't necessarily something that's just going to blow up in your face. Like you're just going to swell, or you're going to, have this noticeable reaction. We need to keep that in mind. It may be so subtle, but these subtle changes over time will add up. Okay, that's the point I'm getting at. And so, and this is the reason why I've been talking about, this whole last 2 weeks with regards to the oils, is although we recognize them to be natural and safe and to have these particular effects on the body, it doesn't necessarily make them 100% good for everybody. Again, depending on the individual genome, depending on if there's medications involved, these all matter. And because of the reaction that the body is having to our environment, it's very difficult to predict at best how we are going to react to any medication or any natural substance for that matter. So erring on the side of caution is always advisable. And so cannabis, not necessarily good for everybody. And then think about it, like I said, when you start pulling components from different places and trying to recreate a synergy, you're playing in a chemistry lab at that point. And what I mean by that, for instance, the Marinol, I think it's pronounced Marinol, it's the pharmaceutical THC. Did you know that you can't take that and mix it with CBD? Can't do it. It's actually not. It's discouraged completely by the pharmaceutical company who's producing it. Do not mix this with CBD. So I'm just letting you know, it's, when we start pulling things from different locations, from different things like medications and, different components, when we start trying to pair different components that don't evolve together, the reaction is going to be different than it would be if you just used a plant or a couple of plants more specific to your individual needs. And this does take some effort. It's not like you're going to open up a book and it's going to be there specifically for you. Experimenting, starting out in low amounts. This is the whole point to this. So now I'll get back to Copaiba. Sorry. Copaiba actually has been very, very good with regards to stomach pain. And I'll explain more about this also in the follow-up blog, and I'll kind of get into the chemistry of it for you. But really, ideally, it's perfect for stomach. And I'm not talking about like indigestion pain or gas pain. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm just talking about all of a sudden you just have a pain in your stomach. And if you've never had one, then it's going to be very difficult to describe to you. If you have had it, then you're familiar with it, but it's just an ache. It's just an ache in your belly and you're not hungry. And like I said, it's not linked to gas or indigestion. It's just a pain in your belly. This is where rubbing a little bit of Copaiba on your tummy actually makes a huge amount of difference. Huge. And this particular oil is really good for children. It's very effective on the BDNF transcription factor. And that transcription factor is actually has been linked to major depressive disorder rage. We see a lot of children who have a tendency, especially with autism, who have a tendency to maybe bang their heads. Um, this oil really helps to alleviate that, really kind of starts to improve the BDNF function and help to relieve that aggression, if you will. So that is another exceptional use for Copaiba. And another one that I like to use it for, well, there's two more actually. It's awesome for sleep because it is so high in beta caryophyllene. It doesn't, and the thing about it is that I have to tell you, the first time I ever used it, I used it before I went to bed because I was looking to help with sleep. I was going through a lot of stuff. I was actually, yeah, I was just going through a lot of stuff. So I went to apply it, and I actually just fell right to sleep. It just really, and so here's an interesting thing I want to say about all of that. When we talk about oils and having a calming sedative kind of a feeling, they can do that. So a couple of things to keep in mind with regards to oils is a lot of the properties are listed and they're very general, okay, unless they specifically say like going for parasites, that helps to limit, and then it may not even tell you what types of parasites. So they're very generalized in the way they're described. And so this is what I hope to help you with, is begin more specific to be, and this is where you can begin to distinguish for yourself. I just kind of started here, didn't I? Be able to distinguish for yourself which oils are best for you. And so getting very specific as opposed to just going, hey, it's great for skin, or hey, it's great for parasites, or hey, it's just great for sleep, or it's a sedative. When we talk about that, that's a very generalized thing. And the thing is with the oils, if we, even though we look at them for these properties, okay, and we select them based on these properties, they're about stability. If we just look at them from that angle, okay, great, this one has a sedating quality to it, and at the same time, it may knock you out the first time, and then all of a sudden, I actually mentioned this, I think, in the Marjoram Spanish blog as well, that over time, it's not as intense. It's not to say that you're not going to go to sleep. It's not to say that it's not helping you. It doesn't mean you need more. It's a sign that the body is stabilizing. I think of my one son's roommate, and I had created. This young man has been stressed to the gills, and I'm not going to get into anything about his personal life, but he's just been really stressed, and so I produced something for him. I made him a couple of blends, one to kind of be uplifting for him during the day because he was struggling with depressive types of moods. He wasn't clinically depressed. He had not been diagnosed with depressed, but he's just really worked up and having discouraging, feeling discouraged. So I created something that was more uplifting for him. At the same time, I helped him with something for sleep. But the bottom line was to help relieve the stress reaction. And in doing so, he crashed hard the first couple times. And then he was like, oh, I just feel so tired. I don't know that if I can use these. And this is what I find happening a lot with people. So you give them and their body starts to react. And the first thing they do is they let it go. They stop using it. And I say, don't do that. I say maybe back off a little bit, maybe use it every other day. I mean, give your body a chance to acclimate to these changes. And in the case of Copaiba, it's the same thing. You might choose it for sleep, the sedative effect to help you kind of lull off to sleep. It's great for children. I recommend using Copaiba instead of melatonin supplements, really, simply because taking melatonin tells the body don't produce melatonin. And then, so you're going to use a couple of other oils in there, but truthfully, Copaiba is, you don't want to use that alone. If you mixed it with myrrh, beautiful, absolutely beautiful for helping to calm the body down. And again, not needing melatonin because we want to encourage, because again, Copaiba does, if you think about it, if it's affecting the endocannabinoid system and other things, it's actually working on the hormonal system. It's helping to stabilize the hormonal system, but we want melatonin to be produced. So we don't necessarily want to take it. So giving Copaiba to children instead of melatonin really sets them up for a stronger sleep cycle as they get older. But that said, back to what we were talking about. So it may have a sedating effect at first, and then it might kind of ease off. Like in the case of Mike, my son's roommate, at first he crashed hard, but then I had to talk him into changing the way he was using a little bit, backing off a little bit. So it wasn't quite, because that just was indicative of how stressed his system was. Okay. When we're that hyper and we go to use something that's calming, it is going to make us feel really, really groggy and sleepy. But it's not a long-term thing, because the more we use it, the more we follow that lead, like, oh crap, I just crashed. Use less the next time, or wait, give yourself a day. But I know then there's the whole thing, well, what if I can't fall asleep tonight? Right? So I get that. So maybe use less would be my next suggestion. But eventually it's going to taper off to where it helps keep the body stabilized. It helps keep the systems regulated in such a way that you're able to fall asleep and stay asleep. And then you don't have that hard crash any longer, but you're able to just kind of maintain a more beneficial sleep cycle. Okay, so that's what I wanted to say along those lines. And the other thing that Copaiba is really good for is skin. It's really nice for skincare. And so that might be something like, for instance, just instead of putting it on at night, maybe using it in a, making your own salve, or serum, facial serum. Real simple. I mean, if you got like pumpkin seed oil, or that's a really nice, soothing, regenerative oil for the skin, and you added a little copaiba to that and maybe a little bit of myrrh, really good for the skin. It'll help you sleep too if you put it on at night. All right. So, but other than that, like I said, you can put it on scars. It's very good for the skin. It's very nourishing. It helps to keep uh, it just helps with fine lines, and it does help with scarring a little bit there too. Okay, so that said, I hope you guys are doing well. I really appreciate you being here. Please share these. If you haven't already, subscribe. Let me know if you have any questions about this oil or anything else. And like I said, I've been saying, and we just finished up the Easter holiday here, and I did have people over. So in all fairness, I'm kind of got a little backlog with the blogs, and I do apologize. But please check them out and follow along. You can sign up to be notified when I do post them over there. 31 Days of Essential Oil tab on synergessence.com. In the meantime, you guys take care, and until tomorrow,